Rain. Outside. You noticed it when you took off your headphones minutes ago, and ever since you've been staring at the window and watching the raindrops slide down the surface of the glass. You know there's nothing there, but for the same reason it always is. You were scared. It's something about the rain that makes you this way. Ever since you're a child. You could never quite put your finger on it. But whenever you looked outside when this kind of weather came along, you always felt as if you were being watched, being observed by something in the rain. Of course, as the years went on, you grew up and your mind developed. Now when you look out the window, you can reason with your fear. Tell yourself there's nothing there. It's just water falling from the clouds. That's all it is. But that childlike sense in the back of your mind, it's always been there. It will always be there. You can't grow out of fear, especially when deep down you know you were scared for good reason.
No, come on, snap out of it. You're in your own place. You're safe. Nothing is outside, and nothing is going to hurt you. Nothing is behind you in the room waiting to attack you when you least expect it.
Or so you tell yourself. When you came in, you shut the door. Or you think you remember shutting it. No, you're positive. You pulled out your keys, unlocked the door, walked in and shut it behind you, and after that you locked it. You pulled the chain across. You might have even checked the peephole just to make sure nobody followed you home. From what you saw, the hallway was empty. No stranger coming to attack you, nobody standing there. But your mind falters at the memory. Did you really lock the door? Is the chain across like you thought? Did you even shut the door? You had a lot of stuff. Groceries. Is it possible that you could have unlocked the door, placed the bags on the table, and then moved into this room, forgetting all about the fact that the door is still swinging open, just inviting somebody, something, into your apartment, your safe sanctuary, the place where you sleep? Is it possible?
No, come on. It's the rain, damn it. That old fear, you're letting it get to you again. Just let it go.
You have let your mind wander far too long while looking at the rain, and despite the fact that you're telling yourself this, your head turns from the window and towards your door, and you find yourself pushing your chair backwards a couple of feet, leaning at the same time as you try and stretch your neck as far as it will go. You shouldn't be checking the door. You know you close it. It's your memory playing tricks. But then, you see it. It's wide open. You get out of your chair slowly, your heart suddenly going a million miles an hour. How could you have left the door open? You know you closed it. You remember closing it. Walking through the entryway to your room and into the main part of the apartment, you're going as slow as you can. Starting to look around the room, you imagine the intruder coming around the corner at you. He has an axe. He raises it above his head and comes down with it in a flash. A lightning strike goes off, and through the split second of light you see the man isn't a man at all, but some sort of twisted, rotted creature. The same thing has happened to the axe. It's not an axe anymore, but rather the thing's claws. At least 5 feet long, razor sharp. You feel them pierce your skin, then your skull. And with horror you realize the creature isn't from this world, but one much more nightmarish. Warm blood starts to flow down the sides of your head as you fall to the ground. And as the light leaves your eyes, you hear the creature speak. A sound neither man nor animal, but something in between.
Sorry, my sweet, but you invited me in after all. You left your door open.
flash of lightning accompanied by thunder snaps you out of the imaginary vision, and you see that the door is approaching. Reaching the sideboard, you suddenly realize you're defenseless and are in need of a weapon of some kind. Anything to use. Reaching out, your hand settles upon the nearest thing. A wax candle. Not the greatest of threats to an enemy, but it will do the job if you play the cards right. Nearing the last piece of corner before the door is reached, you raise the candle above your head, preparing yourself both mentally and physically to have to fight the threat that sits just beyond your reach. Stopping as you reach the edge of the wall, crouching like a wild animal that's about to pounce on its prey, a feeling of adrenaline runs throughout your body at its peak, and a little voice in your mind telling you that if you don't take the advantage of the surprise attack now, you will never be able to save your own life. You listen to that voice as it drives you, intoxicates you, taking over your body. You feel drunk on power, on fear, and everything becomes a blur. You pounce around the corner, a kind of half battle cry, half scream of terror exploding from the throat. And suddenly it's all gone. The fight or flight response has left the body, and a weakness has replaced it. You drop to your knees and sigh in relief as you realize everything you thought was wrong. The door is shut, has been shut the whole time.
I'm such an idiot.
Mumbling this, you pull yourself back up to your feet. Walking up to the door, checking if it's locked, you tell yourself that it's better to be safe than sorry. And satisfied with the state of things, you turn to face the room again. It's the same as it's always been. Nothing is disturbed. Everything is exactly where it should be. It's all in the right place.
A splash of water on my face and a good cup of tea is what I need.
These thoughts guide you as you start to walk again. Normal speed this time. You turn in the direction of the bathroom, but not before leaning over the edge of the corner and putting the candle back where it belongs. You walk forward, stabilizing yourself by putting a hand on the back of your couch as you pass. The adrenaline has taken its toll, and at any minute you think you might collapse. You reach the door of the bathroom and push it open, reaching for the light to the left of the door. After finding it, you switch it on. Light immediately fills the room, and you're suddenly taken back to a quote. Happiness can be found, even in the darkest of places, if only one remembers to turn on the light. You smile at the old saying, rational brain function now coming back to the present. The quote makes sense. The light will always make things better. Making your way over to the basin now, you reach down and turn on the tap, splashing the water on your face. You look up at the mirror to see yourself in the reflection. You smile at yourself as you repeat the thought of having tea inside your mind, and then you switch off the tap. That's when you hear it. It's faint, but you definitely know it's there. It sounds like scratching. No, that's exactly what it is. A faint scratching noise. But there's something else, something even more faint. The sound of footsteps. Looking past yourself in the mirror and through the bathroom door into the main room, your heart starts to pound in your chest once more, but your rational mind kicks in once again.
Don't be silly, the door was shut. You saw it was shut. No one could have gotten in. You would have heard the door open, and you would have heard the door close. There is no way any kind of intruder has come in without you knowing. It's impossible. You're being silly.
You're trying to convince yourself with these thoughts, but the scratching and footsteps, they don't stop. It's beginning to get louder. Or is it that just the brain doing that? Is your subconscious trying to trick you? Is there even a noise at all? You look down at the drain in the basin, and your heart slows as the answer clicks over.
It's the pipes. That's all it is. Just the water going down the pipes. They always make sounds like this. That's just how they are designed. Jesus. I've been living here all this time. I've always known the pipes make noise. I really need to man up. I think the door's left open and suddenly common noises are intruders coming to kill me. Talk about going off the rails.
Sighing in relief, your heart slows even further, returning to its normal 60 beats per minute. You turn, take one step towards the door, then another, and then the light goes out. Breath gets stuck in your throat. You feel your muscles tighten with fear, but then you remember the rain outside.
Power outage. That's all it is. Power outage.
Over to the light switch, you flick it a couple of times. No light to guide the path. You sigh and walk out of the bathroom, making your way through the darkness into the kitchen.
Matches. Where are the matches?
Reaching around the bench with your hand, you feel nothing but the marble surface. A few seconds pass by, then you feel the cardboard box beneath your hand. Jackpot. Sliding the box open and pulling out a match, you light it, the room filled with an orange flickering glow.
I said let there be light, and there was light.
You turn back to face the room, and as you do, you glance down at the coffee table. Your heart is in your throat. Taking deep breaths, you move over to the coffee table and kneel in front of it. Rubbing your eyes, then opening them again, you realize that what sits on top of the piece of furniture is not something you pulled from your imagination, but rather a physical, real-life object. It's a small A4 piece of paper, and written in bold black writing are these words.
I hope you don't mind. I shut your door on the way out.
Averting your eyes to the door, another lightning strike goes off, and thunder follows. And in that intense, fearful moment, you know nothing but the feeling of terror.
I hope you don't mind. I shut your door on the way out.
He had been startled from the laptop screen due to the sounds of the door being unlocked, and after looking around to make sure he had heard what he thought he had, he decided to wait a couple of seconds. He wanted to make sure he was positive. The thing's movements were bound to be happening around this time, and if he heard the door being closed, he would know what to do. Sure enough, moments later, the sound of the entrance to the house being shut sounded out, and he knew that he needed to act then. If he didn't, he would come to regret it. Immediately, he had gotten up out of the chair, turned towards the bed, and had run, jumping in the air. He had landed on the mattress with a soft thud, and as quickly as he could, had scrambled underneath the covers and pulled them up to his neck. He was familiar with what the monster's pattern was. It had happened that often now, that when he saw the time reach 11:30, he would listen out for the usual sound of the latch, followed by the moan. And his instincts would kick in. In these late hours of the night, he needed to be careful. The way the events usually unfolded was that after the monster had made its way into the house, it would come up the stairs to his room and open his bedroom door. The light would be turned on, and it would look around for a while. For those precious 15 seconds or so, he would keep his eyes tight shut and his body completely still, not that he had a choice in the matter. He was so frightened that even if he did want to move, he wouldn't be able to. In a way, he was grateful for that fear. He would never have to roll over and look at the thing as it said his name with that tone of burning anger. He had learned not to make it angry. When the monster was angry, it caused him pain. He never wanted to experience it like he had the first time. Never again. The seconds would seem to tick on forever. The sands of time would run slow, creating another form of torture for the boy while he lay there, listening to nothing but the murmurs of the beast. But thankfully, after the time had passed, and finally the creature was satisfied that the boy was fast asleep, it would leave, turning and walking away, moving on to its next objective. But still the boy would not move. He would wait as long as it took, seconds, minutes, hours, just laying there, frozen in a cocoon of fear. Thoughts running through his head at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Thoughts hoping that the monster wouldn't return. Thoughts deciding what he would do if it returned. Would he get up and fight it? Or would he simply take the punishment it would deal out? Sometimes he thought the creature knew he was faking sleep. It would chuckle to itself sometimes, and the boy was positive he knew what was on its mind.
You think you can fool me by faking sleep? You're going to regret that, boy. I'm going to teach you not to think me a fool.
It was his own mind, driving him crazy with fear at the what-ifs, until he would hear the door to the bedroom down the hall open and close. And at that point, he knew he would be safe. He would take a sigh of relief and wipe the sweat from his body. Another sequence of events had gone by, and when the boy woke up in the morning, the house would be empty again. He wouldn't have to deal with the fear until the next night. Of course, he had thought of running away from the house many times over the years, had thought maybe it was best that he fend for himself out in the world, live on the streets until he came of the age he could work for money, earn his keep. But whenever he would get close to the decision, he would think twice. Being in the house made him fear every day, but being out in the world, that scared him even more. There are much more terrible things out there than this monster, and he knew it. So he waited in fear every night, waited until the monster retreated to its bedroom. Once it was there, he knew it was gone for the night. It would crawl into the bed and lay there until the next morning, and when it got up, it would head out again, go to the place where they paid it to do its job. That liquid it drank, whiskey, the monster called it, would do its work. At least it could do that right after all these years, and the boy was grateful for that. That one good thing that this whiskey could do was make the monster, his father, go to sleep.
You can't feel it. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't hear it. But you know it's there. You're not quite sure how you know, but you do. You know because whenever you think about it, you get that weird tingly feeling up your spine. Some might call it a shiver. You know it's there when your body shakes for a second uncontrollably. People pass this one off as somebody walking over your grave. It's there when you get goose flesh for no apparent reason. It's there when your heart races, when you feel fear, sadness, happiness. People act like they don't know what it is. They live their lives one day at a time, ignoring it always, concentrating on the task at hand, not wanting to know, but rather desperately trying to deny what their reality is, always denying. They say you weigh 20 grams lighter when you die. They say they can't explain it. But that's the correct way of dealing with something like that. The only way of dealing with something like that. Because if the truth were uncovered, it would hit too hard to go on. It's the way they want to deal with something like that. Leave it be with no explanation. They turn their heads the other way. We have all heard about it. Near-death experiences, seeing tunnels of light, having people float out of their bodies to look down upon themselves. You can theorize and talk about it, but when you do, some people look down on you like you're crazy. You're somebody who can't be spoken to. One of the weird ones. But secretly, they feel it. But they don't want to admit the fact that they know, as well as you, what is going on. You can't feel it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't hear it, but you know it's there. A soul. A soul waiting for the time it can be released from the imprisonment that it has had set upon it, to live inside its own personal jail for as long as that prison takes to die. Spending life in a jail of flesh, bones, and blood. Once this sentence takes place, the soul's mind is erased, and it's sent down to this imprisonment, to its nightmare. It travels for a long time, down a tunnel of light, and into a newborn baby. A newborn baby that has been pushed out of another imprisoned soul. The torture is beyond comprehension. A pain that gets more and more intense until the gods see fit to stop it. This can range from 8 to 14 hours. Sometimes, however, the gods aren't so nice, forcing the other souls to cut into this flesh body to get the new prisoner out. What's worse, some of these souls are programmed to believe that what they are doing living in this body is a good thing, praising the very gods that sent them down to this torture, praying to them, telling them that they believe in them, and that they can make everything alright. The gods watch these select few and laugh at them, entertained by how brainwashed and pathetic these souls have become. There's also a legend among the prisoners that are sent down to this place. It tells of a world full of fire and torture, suffering and pain for all of eternity. The gods laugh at that also, talking among themselves.
A place where they go after they die called hell. How desperate of them, trying to shield themselves from something they can only just grasp at. Don't they know where they are is hell itself?
And they don't. These souls never know they are living in their own personal hell. They have even got a name for it. They actually named the place. There have been jokes and discussions to do with this name among the gods, so much as to come up with nursery rhymes to warn their young ones not to break any laws. The rhymes are taught in their schools and sung in their homes. They hear them from such a young age, the rhymes get engraved in their heads so they remember them forever. But there is one such rhyme among the many that really hits the message home. One so easy to remember that it has become the most popular rhyme of them all.
We young souls, so happy here, but don't do wrong, or there will be fear. You'll be sent down so low. Earth is where the bad souls go.
Here she was, number 22 Sanctum Avenue, the envelope in her hands, and the mansion in front of her. This was it, the place where she had been told to come.
I see your destiny. 22 Sanctum Avenue. You must go there. I see a house, a mansion. You will find what you're looking for.
And she had believed her. She truly had. But holding the envelope in her hands at that moment and looking at the structure, lights blazing in both the first and second story windows, she wasn't sure she wanted to fulfill her destiny. Was the psychic really in charge? Should she listen to her? She glanced down at the envelope, which had only 2 words written on the front. You're invited. She was invited. What did that mean? And whoever had sent it, they had known her address. They had known the apartment which she lived in. She had wondered upon finding the envelope in the mail if it were a prank, or was it the real thing? What was written on the envelope inside had been something else entirely. Sunday, 19th of October, 6:30 p.m., 22 Sanctum Avenue. She had not wanted to go at first, thinking that it would probably be best if she stayed home rather than go to this place and potentially be exposing herself to something that wasn't quite right. But then her curiosity had gotten the better of her, and her judgment had fallen.
I'm good friends with the psychic. If it's not anything constructive, it's just going to be a prank anyway. She seems like the kind of person who would do that. I know her well. She keeps going on about how she likes a good prank. And it's Halloween season, what the hell? I'll only go in and have a look. All my friends will probably be there. It will be some party thing. My birthday was last week. Yeah, it's all good. And if nobody's in there, I won't actually go into the place.
No, of course she wouldn't. And now she was here. On the way in the car, she had convinced herself of the things she had thought. And besides, how bad could it be? She had never been let down a bad road before. If it happened to be something that could help her life, it was probably just another one of those coincidences. Like a fortune cookie tells you that love is just around the corner, and you bump into a guy at the coffee shop. No big deal. It's a sign. Looking back up at the building, she stuffed the envelope back into her handbag and walked towards it. But when she reached the porch, she began to hesitate.
Wait a second. Where are all the cars? If it was a party, shouldn't cars be here? A lot of cars. I know for a fact that Mark has a red Toyota, and that's not here. He's my best friend, and if there is a party for me, he would definitely be invited. Maybe I should turn around. What if it's some cult? What if the psychic is some satanic ritualist or whatever? Masquerading as an everyday nice-natured future reader, and then by night she cuts the throats off animals and drains the blood into some buckets so she can drink it. It's possible. And that envelope was never explained. Where did the damn envelope come from?
The bad feeling inside her escalated tenfold. She needed to get out of there. Her instincts had kicked back in. The trance that had gripped her had been turned to dust. Of course, this wasn't a party. She should have seen it earlier. The psychic kept jars of snakes as well as spiders. She knew. But she didn't see the signs earlier. Why didn't she see the signs earlier? 3 months she had been going to this woman, and she never thought that something was wrong with keeping dead things in the freaking jars? And those times she had arrived to the appointment early, she had thought she had heard something from the back of the place. Muffled screams? Were they screams? Something was wrong. She needed to get out. Now.
No, I shouldn't be here. Maybe it's better if I just go home. I'll go home. Television, hot chocolate, bed, perfect night. That's what I need. A perfect night. I'll just go back to the psychic and say nobody was home. Nobody was home. Just an abandoned building. Or maybe I won't go back at all. I'll get a proper professional for this anxiety problem. Proper way to overcome it. What was I thinking about this psychic reading shit? No, I need to go. I need to go now.
She turned around and took a step forward, and another. She was about to hit the stairs, the feeling deep down inside her now screaming, telling her to get out of there.
Drive home! Drive home now! What are you doing here?
She went to break into a run, but as she did, she felt something on her back. A cold feeling, like a massive piece of ice had just been pushed against her. She tried to step forward again, but it didn't work. She couldn't move.
What is this?
Now, Jane. Going so soon? You were invited after all, and when you get invited to events, it's rude not to come in.
Jane felt herself being pulled back towards the mansion.
Come on in. We will get you a nice warm cup of hot chocolate, and you can watch television. It will be a perfect night. Yes, the perfect night.
No, I shouldn't have come here. It's not right.
The outside disappeared around her as she was dragged into the building, and the blazing light, which she had seen from the outside, enveloped her vision.
The perfect night.
A noise punctured the silence through the blinding light. It was the sound of the door closing. A couple more seconds went by, and then the sound of a voice from far away rang out in her head. It was echoing. She started to feel a pain inside her head, and her vision went blurry. Blackened edges closed in. The last thing she heard before the blackness took her was a female voice. The same voice that she had listened to when her fate was being told every week for the past 3 months.
I'm so glad you got my invitation.
I was washing the dishes. It was something that I usually did on a Saturday morning. After all, there's not much else you can do when there's nothing on TV, your wife is getting groceries, and your son is out in the yard playing. It's something to entertain your brain for about 10 to 15 minutes. You can just think and wash. It's simple. I heard the back door open, and I was right in thinking it was my son. He came through the hallway and out into the living room, that look of typical exhaustion on his face. As usual, he had been playing all morning out on the farm. He was dirty, his clothing littered with grass stains and muddy patches, but that was okay. I preferred having the clothes needed to be washed because he was outside rather than having to yell at him because he was spending too much time on electronic devices. 9-year-olds should be out and about, in my philosophy, not stuck inside operating the newest gadget to hit the stores. Crossing to the couch opposite the TV, he sat down and took a sigh of relief.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Nothing, Dad.
How was the grounds? Are the animals doing okay?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Find anything?
It was a question I usually asked him. It was kind of a tradition that had come up months before when I had found him digging in the yard. He told me he wanted to be a paleontologist, find the fossils of dinosaurs for a living. Of course, he wasn't going to find bones digging as shallow as he did, but he usually found other things. Old wood, pieces of metal. One time he found part of an old wheel. We both came to the conclusion that it must have been left there and buried a long time ago. I had it cleaned of rust and dirt, and we hung it in his room as a kind of memorial, the day Matthew Johnson found the wheel. It was a legend that would live forever. Forever being until the day he grew out of his childhood and moved on to bigger things. But I could still appreciate it. The nostalgia would be there for me. I asked him the question every time he came back inside, and he always answered it immediately. But when I asked it today, he didn't answer. There was no excited yelling as he showed me the latest thing, no nearly tripping over the stairs as he ran up to put it in his room, and that told me something was wrong. I stopped doing the dishes and turned to face the couch, seeing that, although he was sitting upright, his head was face down towards the ground.
You okay, buddy?
Still no answer. Sighing, I walked over to the couch and sat down next to him.
What's wrong, Matt?
Nothing?
At this point, I knew he was lying. He had that tone in his voice, and I knew it all too well. The kind of half-sad, half-leave-me-alone reply. He always used it when he was trying to conceal something he had done. I'd seen it countless times throughout his life.
Matthew, I know you're not telling the truth.
There was a moment of silence before he looked up at me, a scared look on his face.
Promise you won't be angry with me.
God damn it. He has done something to the farm equipment.
I knew this was the case. He was messing around with something, it broke, and he had come back into the house, hoping to avoid being yelled at. I swallowed down a burst of frustration before answering his question.
I promise I won't be mad. Just tell me what happened.
There was a moment's hesitation before he spoke, but when he did, he said something that I had never considered would come out of his mouth. In fact, when he told me, I was completely lost for words. Reaching into his pocket, he fidgeted around for a little, and moments later, pulled a clenched fist out. He then held his hand out to me, and slowly spread his fingers. In the possession of my son were 3 brass bullets, each unfired. Having had experience with guns in the past, I knew they were from a handgun. 9mm rounds. Unmistakably. It took me a few seconds to compose myself, but after I had, I asked my son the only question that came to mind.
Matthew,
You need to tell me where you found these.
I took the bullets from him as he answered.
Down behind the barn, where you guys keep the old tractor.
I knew the place. I hadn't walked down there in months. There wasn't really anything behind there to take care of. All the animals were on the main part of the land, and all the other vehicles we really needed were stored in the barn itself. The area behind the structure was more a storage area for things that needed to be fixed and items we didn't really have room for in the main house.
Can you take me there? I need you to show me where you found these.
He muttered something like, "Yes, Dad," and got off the couch. Followed him out the back door and into the sunshine. As we walked towards the barn, I studied the bullets, moving them this way and that in my hand, trying to force the thoughts and questions in my head from racing at me at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Why would there be bullets behind the barn? What were they doing there in the first place? Are there others that are being used to hurt or kill anybody? Where's the gun that goes with them? Have these simply been buried in a good place? Kept in good condition by some sort of natural phenomenon of nature? Perhaps they're decades old, used by the previous farmer to put down sick animals.
I hoped that last thought was the right answer. I didn't want to find out these bullets were in fact brand new, and that whoever the gun belonged to had been living on the farm for weeks in secret. Months, even. Was he a hunter? A serial killer? A squatter that just happened to be carrying the bullets on him? The best answer was still bad, however, and I knew that whatever the truth would be, it wouldn't turn out to be sunshine and roses. We approached the barn, and Matthew led me around the outside to the back of it, stopping a few feet away from the tractor at the edge of the fence which marked the boundary of the farm. I was pointed down towards the ground. Upon following the direction, I found a small hole that had been dug there, around 50 centimeters in diameter and looking to be quite deep. I knelt down on one knee and began to study. It didn't take long to find the black box at the bottom of the hole. Reaching inside the earth, I grabbed hold of it and brought it to the surface, placing it on the ground beside me. Looking up at Matthew, I opened my mouth.
Did you find the bullets in here?
Slowly, he nodded, and with worry and fear gripping my heart, I reached towards the box, grabbed the top with my hand, and slowly opened it. As the light hit the space inside, what was revealed was a series of multiple items. To the far left of the box, more bullets were placed neatly in the space provided, each matching the ones in my hand. There was more ammunition. On the bright side, wherever the gun was and whoever owned it would have to come back here to get the rounds if they were to run out of what they currently had. To the right of the box was a folded piece of paper and a small rectangular plastic card. Deciding to go with the smaller object first, I hesitated for a moment before I picked it up, turning it over. Shock and fear seized me once again. It was a driver's license. The identification picture was a red-headed girl that looked to be in her early 30s, the person that the license belonged to. Her name was Lisa Barth, born on the 12th of November, 1984.
Why is this girl's license buried in my backyard?
Again, the questions came flooding in. I didn't let them take hold of me. Not just yet. Putting down the license, I reached for the piece of paper. If indeed there was an explanation for this, perhaps it was written down. Picking up the paper and unfolding it, I saw that indeed something was written on it, and I wasted no time finding out what that was. Starting from the top, I made my way down the page, one sentence at a time. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Barth, I'm sorry to tell you this, and trust me, if it were up to me, you wouldn't even be getting this letter. But I just wanted to let you know that I was the one who killed your daughter. I didn't mean to do it. It wasn't like it was a planned thing, but I didn't have a choice. See, I was there and she was there, and it was just too much of a risk. After all, you can imagine after you have killed somebody else and there was a witness, you do have to get rid of that witness. If you don't, well, The police get involved, and jail time gets given out, and blame is put on people. And well, that's just too messy for my liking. You see, I need freedom. I can't spend my life in the big house, no. I'm just not made for it. If I were to spend any time in that place at all, I simply would not survive. But anyway, enough of me. This letter is about your daughter. I won't tell you the gory details, but just know that it was quick and she didn't suffer. It was over almost immediately after it had begun. Again, so sorry for your loss. Oh, and don't bother contacting the police for fingerprints on this letter. You will find none. Kind regards, Jennifer Johnson. I was frozen solid as I read the name of the person who wrote the letter.
Jennifer Johnson? No, it can't be. Not my wife.
I couldn't think, I couldn't move. I held my breath until I felt like I was going to suffocate. After all these years, all the things we had been through together, meeting her, the happy times, the fights, the day I asked her to be my wife, and the day we got married. The day she told me she was pregnant, everything. It was all a lie. No, I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. My wife wasn't a killer. No, this was somebody else. Some other person named Jennifer Johnson. It was the only answer. It had to be the only answer. I knelt there in the dirt and grass for what felt like an eternity, just staring down at the letter in my hand. It seemed as though I was going to stay that way. That was until the sound of Matthew's voice asking me a question brought me back out of my head and into the real world once more.
What's wrong, Dad? Are you okay? Did I do something wrong?
I didn't know how to answer him.
Matthew, I need you to never come back to this spot, okay? Can you promise me?
As I said this, I folded the paper back up, then put it back in the box. After, I shut the lid and placed it back in the hole, filling it with dirt once again. If this was evidence of my wife murdering somebody, it needed to be covered up, both for my sake and the kids. If Jennifer was truly what the letter said she was, our lives could be in danger. Even if it wasn't true, it was better to be safe than sorry.
But why, Dad? Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything is okay. You just need to stay away from this place. Do you understand? It's off limits.
But
Matthew, if you come back here, you will be grounded for life.
It was the only way I could think of having him stay away from this place. Pathetic, I know, but for a 9-year-old, being grounded was one of the worst things in the world. Or, so I hoped it was. The memories of my childhood had escaped me in that moment.
oh, okay, Dad. I won't come back here.
He seemed to have gotten the message. I finished burying the box and stood back up.
Okay, come on, let's go back to the house.
I turned around, took him by the hand, and stopped dead in my tracks. Standing between us and the way back to the house was my wife. There was silence for what seemed like a lifetime. Her standing there, a blank expression on her face and a grocery bag in her hand. Matthew and I looking back at her, my son wondering what was going on, and me not knowing what to do. She looked down at the now filled-in hole. I see you found my secret hobby. I didn't know what to do. At that moment, it was confirmed. My wife was a murderer. What was going to happen? How would Matthew and I get out of this? Was she going to kill us too? Raising the plastic bag now, Jennifer tilted her head to the side, and then said her next sentence as casually as I had ever heard somebody speak. I guess dinner is off then. The door burst open, and the torchlight streamed into the long-since vacant supermarket. The snow from the outside world following in its wake as the sound of footsteps echoed and bounced off the walls. The two humans made their way inside, one taking the left end of the store, while the other took the right, each with their silenced pistols at the ready. The two men had seen many a winter, some of them with conditions of light hail and rain, others blizzards of seemingly never-ending tenure that would go on for days at a time, with no let-up. Almost as if the world was fighting back, testing the determination of the human existence. The two had seen summers as well, autumns and springs, but this was a first for both of them. They were living the end of human life as they knew it. The human that had taken the right side stopped as he heard the sound of a silenced bullet being fired out of a gun, and turned in the direction of it, scanning the area with his torch to find any signs of danger. Moments later, the other walked into the torchlight, holding the head of what looked to be a human being that had been dead for some time. "Hey Marcus, I'll give you a tin of soup if you eat its eye." Using the silenced muzzle of his weapon, the man tapped near the head's left eye socket twice. The ill-colored, half-moldy lump of flesh with maggots crawling through it was what the man had been talking about.
I'll give you a tin to shut up.
The man laughed as Marcus made the remark, throwing the head with an underarm action. It landed at Marcus's feet, and after shining his torch down on it for a second or two, the man moved on, going back to searching the store for supplies.
Hey, we're looking for alcohol, right?
Marcus had asked the question, and a few moments later, a reply had come back at him. "Yep, and anything else we can use. Ammo, food, drugs."
Do you have a spare backpack to carry all the other stuff?
"I do. Brought a spare when I figured we may as well grab some other stuff. I mean, what the hell, right? We're out here anyway, let's make the most of it." Shrugging, Marcus fell silent again and shone his flashlight on the passing shelves as he walked down each aisle, taking his time as he did so.
Alcohol. Alcohol. Where is the alcohol?
He would have looked in the usual locations where a store like this would keep such a thing, but they had come across this place weeks earlier, and it had already been raided of liquor, along with most anything else they could have used. However, there were other stores in the area, and this one being the first location-wise in that line, having a second look was a thought that had occurred to them, although they didn't expect to find anything of much use.
Doesn't look like there's much here.
The thought came as his footsteps led him to the end of the third aisle, and upon turning to walk into the next one, he spotted his partner at the end of it.
Anything?
"I got a few unopened soft drink cans, but apart from that, it looks like this place is fresh out of shit to pick up for the long haul." Marcus sighed and lowered his pistol.
The next store it is.
He turned 180 degrees towards the entrance to the store and started walking. A few moments later, he heard the sound of his partner approaching from behind. As they neared the door, he stopped and turned, facing the other man.
Ladies first, Ben.
"By all means then, go on ahead." Marcus smirked and then slowly made his way out into the open. As their shoes hit the pavement, both men were immediately hit with a wave of freezing cold air, each in turn pulling their coats tighter around them.
You know, this denim shit does next to nothing against this kind of stuff.
Ben looked over at Marcus, who now had his arms folded over his chest and his denim coat buttoned up to the top. "Don't complain, man. You're the one with the fur collar and the beard. All I got is this scarf."
I prefer a scarf to worn out piece of shit fur.
Trust me, you wouldn't.
Let's get over to the damn car before I freeze to death.
You don't have to ask twice. The conversation ceased, and the two made their way over to the two-door V8 coupe that served as their vehicle. It wasn't the best type of thing to be driving in this kind of weather, but the two had had it equipped with snow tires, and the heating was good. Besides, this model was Ben's favorite car, and considering he could never afford one of them when society was intact, he figured that since it was the end of the world, he may as well enjoy the little things as much as he could. Approaching the car and getting in, Ben turned on the engine and then the heater. Lukewarm air blew out of the interior, and Marcus moved his hands to hover them above the vent on his side of the car. Ben moved his hand down to the gear shift and shifted it into reverse, turning it into the street. Once they were in a straight line, he shifted it again, into first gear this time, and pressed the accelerator. The car started to move down through the ice-covered street and falling snow. After 10 minutes, the engine had heated up, and the heater was running the way it should. Marcus let his hands fall and leaned back in his seat, sighing as he closed his eyes for a few seconds. After he reopened them, he moved his head to look through the window and out into the world. He had known a world before this. A world where things had order, things got done, and people were civilized. Society was kind, and the rules were religion. All of that was gone now, disappearing in a blink of an eye, faded out of existence like breath on a mirror. It felt like years ago, a vague memory only recalled after a long time spent within one's own mind, searching through the endless corridors of thought. But he missed it nonetheless. He had been a salesman, selling brand new cars at a dealership. The job wasn't so good, but it paid the bills. When he came home, most nights he would feel drained and unmotivated. But looking back now, he would rather come home in that state of mind than have to fight his way through life day after day to survive. Turning towards Ben, he opened his mouth.
You know, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about your life before all this.
What, you mean before everything turned to shit?
Yeah.
Well, that's because there's really not that much to talk about. Mine was what you would call a boring life. Besides, doesn't really matter that much now, does it?
It's only been 4 months. It's not like we're two guys talking about the good old days.
Ben glanced over at his partner for a split second, a cynical look on his face. I was a delivery boy for the local pizza restaurant. My boss was an asshole, and I got shitty wage. I had a small apartment, and I was in debt up to my eyebrows. No wife, no kids, and the last girlfriend I had was about 4 years ago. Anything else?
Do you miss it?
Of course I miss it, man. I might have a shitty life, but it's certainly not worth giving up for this kind of thing. I vote for crappy bosses all the way. Marcus grunted a laugh and moved his eyes back to the window. He thought of the old world and the good times as the car moved down through the streets and past the buildings. "15 minutes later, Ben slowed the car to a crawl and, rotating the steering wheel, turned off the road and onto the side. After, he stopped and turned the engine off. Both men looked out of Marcus's window to see a warehouse structure towering over the smaller stores around it. They had reached their next destination.
Ready when you are.
Let's do it. The two of them got out of the car and shut the doors behind them, starting to make their way towards the warehouse. Both of them had their pistols in their hands at their sides, and each a flashlight in their other hand. Getting to the door, they stopped and began to study it. It was one of those double supermarket auto opens that would split in two if you were walking towards it. One half would go left, and the other right. The right half of this particular door the two men were looking at, however, had had the glass panel shattered, exposing the inside of the structure to the conditions of winter. "Go first, Marcus. I'll cover you." Nodding, he stepped over the threshold and through the broken glass, trying as hard as he could not to nick himself on any of the pieces sticking out of the framework. Upon his head entering the structure, he immediately smelt the unmistakably foul scent of a rotting corpse.
Something is dead in here.
He said, turning back for a brief second to look at his partner. He walked further into the place. Ben wasn't far behind, and soon enough, they were standing side by side, facing the expanse of the building. "Okay, we go together. Don't break formation." Marcus nodded, and side by side they headed towards the right of the store, towards the direction from which the smell was coming from. It didn't take them long to find the cause of it. Sitting halfway down the second last aisle were two corpses, each showing the physical symptoms of the change undergone by those who turned into these things. Bulging muscles with the veins sticking out everywhere, and an abnormally large body. Whoever these things were before the change, there was no trace of them now. As they made their way towards the creatures, both of them raised their weapons. They couldn't be too careful, even if they believed them to be dead. In the past, they had come across these creatures in a similar way to what they were in the aisle, and they had still come alive and tried to kill each of them in turn. There was no way they were going to let it happen again. They stopped, reaching as far a distance as they dared to come to the creatures, and slowly, Ben raised his hand. Using a hand signal, he counted from 3, and after 1 was said, the two men fired 3 rounds each into the heads of the corpses. The soft sound of the bullets traveling through the silenced barrel could be heard. Then there was nothing but the wind outside echoing through the warehouse. The 1-2 punch. Probably one of the best methods for disposing of unwanted zombie creatures, don't you think? Ben said this with a smile, turning back to face Marcus for a second, lowering his weapon as he did so. Marcus, replying with a laugh, began to walk forward, moving past his partner and stepping over the bodies. He spoke without turning around.
I'm going to check the next aisle. Meet you back at the front.
Sure thing. Ben let him go, kneeling down to study the corpses further. There was no change in the look of them. He had seen countless amounts of these things, and each time, they always seemed to have the same features. Sure, the blown-up body was expected, but he had thought that the heads of the things would look different to one another. After all, the things were once humans, and not one single human looked alike to another one. Similar, but not alike. Even if they were twins, you could always tell the differences between the two faces if you looked close enough. It was a terrifying thought. If the evidence held solid, it meant that not only do you become an uncontrollable killer when you turn, but whatever infected you also changes the entire structure of your face to make you look like it wanted you to look. Ben sighed, taking his eyes off the creature. This thing seems like it's more of an alien infection than a virus created on Earth. As the thought ran through his head, he saw that the shelf he was facing contained multiple items of canned food, and he moved towards them, taking off his backpack and putting them in it as he came within reaching distance. If he couldn't find out why all these creatures looked the same, at least he could gather supplies for the group, and with the unanswerable question lingering in the back of his mind, that was exactly what he did. Meanwhile, Marcus was collecting his own supplies. Having walked down the drug aisle, he had accidentally come across what may as well have been a gold mine. This area of the warehouse was all but full of supplies. It seemed as though only a couple of items had been taken off the shelves. Either everyone was in a rush to get out of there, or something had happened while the majority of the supplies were here, causing them to be unaffected by the crisis. Whatever the reason, Marcus wasn't complaining. So far, he had picked up painkillers, cough medicine, and protein formula. But what he was really looking for was some kind of antibiotic drug. If they were going to fight the apocalypse, they would need something for when people got badly sick. Painkillers weren't going to fight everything, and without the proper medicine, one could only guess how long they would survive in conditions like this. They had already been lucky for the last couple of weeks as it was, the one condition being an 8-year-old boy. And as far as Marcus was concerned, they may as well be running on borrowed time. An infection of some sort was bound to come by soon, whether they were ready for it or not. It was best to be prepared. He went back over the aisle, checking both sides multiple times for antibiotics. There was none, and letting out a disappointed sigh, he decided to move on, walking down to the end and into the next section. Taking his time and looking through as carefully as he could, he was nearing the halfway point, when suddenly he heard an unknown voice coming from the next aisle down. The one where Ben was located.
Put the gun down!
There was no response, and upon hearing the voice for a second time, Marcus ducked down behind the cover of the shelf, raising his weapon and turning off his flashlight. If the man was a threat, he would be able to sneak up behind him while he was distracted with Ben and get the jump on him. He started to move down the aisle, away from where he had come from, and down to the other end, moving behind the assailant as he did so. He heard the voice of the intruder once more.
That's it. On the ground. Now kick away the gun. Now get down on your knees, hands behind your head. Do it now! Now, where is the other guy?
What other guy?
There was another guy here with you. I heard you two talking. Where the hell did he go?
I'm the only one here, man.
Don't lie to me, goddammit, or I'll put a bullet straight through your skull. Now where the hell is he?
Just as the man said this, Marcus finished the switching aisle sneak technique and was now facing the back of the man, who had a submachine gun pressed against the side of Ben's head. He wasted no time in standing up and positioning his pistol so it was pointed straight at the man's head. Right here. The intruder had time to whirl around, get a split-second view of the way Marcus's gun was held, and then a bullet passed through his head, spraying blood through the exit wound. The body of the man fell backwards, landing with a hard cracking sound.
That's what I always hated about villains,
Marcus said, now moving down the aisle towards the corpse.
Nobody ever just shot them when they were crapping on about their master plan.
He approached Ben and held his hand out to help him up. His partner took it and thanked him once he was balanced on his feet. Thought the guy would have shot me for sure.
Well, you're lucky I came along then.
The two laughed, and together they searched the store. Over the next half hour, the pair spent the time gathering, finding bullets, food, some clothes, and packed as much drugs as they could into the space left in their bags. They were still at a loss for antibiotics nonetheless, but they had found the alcohol that Alex had wanted for sterilization. At least that part of the task was done. Soon enough, they were back on the road and heading for their camp. It was a long road, and since the two didn't really talk, all Marcus had to concentrate on was the outside world. He watched the snow fall from the sky and the trees moving in the wind. He watched the sun go down as time ticked on, the second never halting as the time went from 5 to 6, then to 6:30. It was nearing 6:45 as they drove up the hill, and the car slowed. In a few minutes, the light from the camp would come into view, and they would be home. Home, sweet home. Sure enough, just as promised, they arrived back as the darkness had fallen upon them, creeping its shadow across the world like tendrils of bacteria, enveloping everything in its wake, leaving nothing to chance. It converted everything to match its natural habitat. No life would live in daylight until the sun rose again. Parking the car in the field that the group used for vehicles, they each got out of the car and made their way towards the tents and the circle of survivors that had gathered around the fire. Although they still had their winter clothing on, it didn't seem as though the flames were doing their job quite the right way.
Another successful supply run. What do you know? We may still make it through the winter.
We'll see. You never know what's around the next corner. After Ben's sentence, Marcus patted him on the back in a friendly manner.
I'll see you around, man. I gotta drop this alcohol by Alex.
Yeah, I'll see you later. And with that, they broke apart. Ben walking towards the fire, and Marcus making his way towards the tents. He walked by various types. Family-sized, one-man-sized, ones that were made for 2 people, but had managed to cram 3 or 4, and then he spotted the one he had been looking for. It was a large tent, yellow in color, and it was the 3rd biggest in the camp. Not designed for people to sleep in, the group had made it their medical center. If somebody got sick, it would be better to isolate the danger, rather than have it spread through the camp. They had had to start thinking ahead and use their resources wisely. That's why it was considered best to have the one person they trusted with their lives. The camp doctor, a woman who went by the name of Alex Mason. Marcus approached the tent. He had gathered the supplies, and now it was time to hand them over. Stopping at the entrance to the tent, he opened his mouth and spoke to the person inside.
Special delivery of alcohol for Miss Mason.
It was a second or two before the reply came from within. Well, come on in then. Can't keep the customer waiting. Marcus grinned, leaned forward, and pushed the tent flap back, revealing a dim space, a woman sitting in the middle of the tent, and a figure on the bed behind her. The woman looked to be in her mid-30s with long auburn hair and a pretty face. The winter clothing she wore was made of a heavy wool that had been stained a bluish color. The bottom half was made up of jeans, accompanied by fur boots. Waving, Marcus stepped over the entrance of the tent, then turned back around, zipping the tent up from the inside. Once the outside world had been sealed from them both, he turned back to Alex. Sitting down, he took the bag off his back and placed it on the ground. So, what has Mr. White gotten me today?
Well, let's see here. There's a bottle of Jack Daniels, a bottle of vodka, and some bandages. I figured you might have run out, so I got some more just in case.
He got the items out of the bag as he spoke, placing each one next to the other in front of him, making a line of objects. You've done well. This stuff will be a big help. Thanks.
Hey, it's no problem. The less infection, the better.
Thank you, Marcus. Smiling as she said this, Alex leaned forward to kiss him on the cheek, giving him a hug afterwards. She moved herself back to her original position. There was a few moments of awkward silence, until he said,
You're welcome.
Picking the bag up and moving it to the side of the tent.
How is he?
She sighed and turned her head to look behind her, glancing at the bed and the 8-year-old boy huddled under the 4 layers of blankets. No better. He's still got the fever and no appetite. If he doesn't get better soon, I don't know if he will make it. Taking her eyes off the boy, she faced the ground, tears starting to well in her eyes. She wiped them away with the back of a hand and moved her head back up to face Marcus.
Is there anything I can do?
He asked the question, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a handkerchief. It was dirty, but she took it anyway, beginning to dab her eyes with it as she spoke again. You brought the painkillers and the alcohol. You've done all you can. Let's just hope aspirin gives his body the strength to fight back. She dried the last of the tears and held out the handkerchief.
No, keep it. Something tells me you might need it more than I will.
She thanked him again and sniffed once.
Well, I hate to go, but after a day of running around looking for supplies, I think I might need a little rest.
No doubt you do. Not everyone can be a knight in shining armor. He laughed at the response.
Nope, but they can certainly try.
Waving a goodbye, he turned and unzipped the tent, making his way out into the open again. He would have gone over to sit down with the others and munch on some dinner, but he quickly decided that it was far too cold for such things, and that he would rather just go into his tent and collapse into the warmth. He would push himself into his sleeping bag and lay there until his eyes grew heavy and sleep was able to take him. Getting both into the tent and the sleeping bag was the easy part of the journey. Falling asleep, however, that was something entirely different. He lay there awake for what seemed like hours, simply staring at the top of the tent and listening to the conversation of the others die down bit by bit until there was nothing but the sound of the howling wind. He supposed that sleeping in 3 layers of clothes wasn't exactly comfortable either, but he would rather be kept awake for all hours of the night and be warm than have somebody wake up in the morning to find his frozen corpse, looking as though it was doing an impression of Jack Nicholson at the end of The Shining. In the end, he managed to close his eyes, relax, and focus his thoughts on the past. No apocalypse, no danger, no zombie steroid creatures chasing after him and any other survivors. No, it was just him and the memories of his home. He imagined himself opening the front door to the living room, imagined the couch in front of the television, the news reporter giving the audience that week's weather as the green screen behind her projected the names of places in the country. He imagined the kitchen, the stairs, the second floor, walking into his bedroom to find the queen-size bed in the center of the room, and his wife sitting on the end of it, cradling their 8-month-old baby in her arms. He imagined her turning to face him, a smile on her face, and asking him to come and sit with her. And he did, placing himself behind to look over her shoulder at their son. He imagined her scent. He imagined her turning around to kiss him, and he imagined they were happy again. And as he finally drifted off to sleep, he imagined no more. Health officials advise that you stay indoors as much as possible, and only go outside if absolutely necessary. Now is the time to stock up on whatever is essential, and to stay with your families. Don't cause unnecessary danger to anybody, yourself included. It is also reported that a cure is currently underway, and will be available in vaccination form for the public in the next couple of weeks to month. There will be more news on the epidemic as it comes. This is Johnson Michaels reporting for Channel 15 News. Marcus leaned forward to pick up the remote off the coffee table, then pointed it at the television, pressing the power button. The image disappeared, leaving nothing but the black void and its reflection in the curved glass screen. They had been showing these kinds of reports for 2 weeks now, and every day the human race seemed to be worse off than the day before, with the constant news about the infected turning into anger-filled monsters, to the CDC stating that whatever this thing was, it was of unknown origin. Marcus had begun to think that maybe nobody in power had any answers at all. That they were just feeding the public what they wanted to hear as not to cause a globe-wide panic attack. Better to control people with lies than have them believe the truth of a dire situation. The thoughts left him as the sound of footsteps started to come down the stairs one at a time. After a couple of seconds, a woman came into view of the first floor, holding a baby in her arms. She completed the walk down the last couple of steps, then raised her head from looking at the floor to him. Opening her mouth, the words came out in a worried whisper. "What's the news?"
No change so far. They still say the cure is being worked on and to go out only when we need to.
The woman sighed and crossed to the corner of the room nearest the television, placing the baby in a crib that had been set up there. After, she sat down on the couch next to Marcus, putting her head on his shoulder. He responded by wrapping an arm around her. "What's going to happen, Mark?" He said the one thing he knew for sure.
I don't know.
Silence lingered over the house as the two of them sat there, staring at the blank television screen for what seemed like hours, each too busy tangled up in their own thought-induced trance to speak to the other. Was this really the end of the human race? He thought that when the species would go extinct, he would long since be dead, his body nothing more than a decomposed pile of dirty bones and half-rotted away clothing. The sun would be on the brink of death, the earth hanging on to that last thread of sunlight before the destruction of its lifeline. The sun would break apart, and the earth would be put into darkness. The planet would endure for a short amount of time before the huge chunks of rock smashed into it. After, the earth would be nothing more than a memory in the face of the universe. It seemed, however, that that situation would not come to pass. Human beings would see the end far beyond their time. All thanks to themselves. The human existence led themselves to their own downfall. How poetic. As the thought struck him, the overwhelming fear that had risen over the weeks temporarily vanished, replaced by an almost uncontrollable anger. It was the human race that did this. Experimenting with diseases and chemical warfare, for what purpose? To see how quickly they could kill a whole country if they waged war? To end that war through the suffering of people for days rather than the sweet release of a nuclear attack? No, they couldn't possibly release something nuclear. It will make the area unusable for tens of thousands of years. Was there a difference between the two? Perhaps there was a third answer also. Was it simply for the hell of it? The people were bored, with nothing better to do with their time than create a concoction that would wipe out the planet in a matter of months. Look at us. We can kill ourselves in so many different ways. Instead of working together, coming up with constructive ways to help our longevity within the rapid changing world, we find ways to kill ourselves. The human race, served up on a plate for the galaxy to see. His anger turned to worry so suddenly that he had barely enough time to register what had just happened as he rushed to the front window to see what was going on. He had been pulled from his thoughts by a sudden sound he could only recognize as a gunshot. "What's going on, Mark? Can you see anything?" He turned his head from the window momentarily, whispering.
Shh, Jane, I'm trying to see.
The baby had also been woken up by the sound and was now crying with Jane trying to calm her down as best she could. Darting her eyes from her son to her husband, she wasn't sure if she herself was going to go into a state of panic. Her fear was tripled as Marcus finally turned back around and told her where the source of the gunshot had come from.
Okay, don't panic, but there's a crowd gathered out there, and Joe is among them. I think somebody might have been shot.
Someone might have been shot? What do you mean? What are you talking about? She stood up as she said this, beginning to walk towards the window. Marcus stepped in front of her, blocking both her way and the view of the street.
I'm going out there to check it out. I want you to stay here. Calm the baby down. Don't follow me.
He went to walk towards the front door, but she stopped him, grabbing his arm. Don't go out there, Mark. You don't even know what the hell is going on. Wait a second. There could be more gunshots. I don't want you getting hurt. Her voice had turned to a frantic plea, and Marcus had to hug her to calm her down.
I'll only be out there for a little while. If anybody raises a gun, I'll be back in here as fast as I can. I need to check this out.
No, Mark, please.
I'll be okay.
Mark, please. He didn't respond this time. Instead, he made his way towards the door and then opened it, leaving Jane almost beside herself with their son still crying in her arms. Slowly, he made his way towards the group of neighbors that had formed a kind of circle in front of a house down the street. Getting there, He pushed through until what had happened came into view. The things he saw before him were horrifying. The crowd was gathered outside the house of Mr. Lewis. Marcus didn't know much about him, just that he was in his late 30s and worked in the garden most days, regardless of the weather. It seemed that whatever had happened to him had happened while he was doing that very garden work. Laying there was what looked like a man who had taken too many steroids, his muscles blown up and disproportioned, veins sticking out. Not only was the monster-like thing there, but also a woman's headless body, blood pouring out of the neck. It didn't take long for Marcus to spot the head was laying nearby, the features frozen in a shock-like expression. Almost immediately upon seeing it, he felt vomit welling up in his throat and had to clasp a hand over his mouth to force it back down in order not to vomit his last meal out onto the bitumen road. After somewhat regaining control of himself, he spotted Joe on the other side of the crowd and made his way through, walking up behind the man.
What the hell happened?
The man turned to see Marcus behind him. Peter, he was out tending to his garden when, well, I don't know. He just transformed. All his muscles, everything. He just got so huge like a monster. Jennifer came out to see what was going on and, well, he tore her head off. He struggled to get the words out. After that, Peter, he turned around to face us. That's when James put a bullet through his head. The man couldn't speak anymore, and as Marcus looked around, he spotted a man and a boy, no older than 15, walking down the road away from him. The man was carrying a rifle in the hand at his side, lingering his gaze on the rifle for a couple of seconds, then forcing his head back around. He stared at what had become of Mr. Lewis, and slowly, a realization came upon him. This was how the world would end. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. He woke to the sound of movement and voices. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up and pulled himself out of the sleeping bag. He sat for a couple of minutes as his brain came back from the dreaming world and back into reality.
Shit.
He thought, bringing his hands up to his head.
Get out of there.
He hit himself lightly. It was the third time in a row he had dreamt of the past, his mind trying to sort out the events that had happened 4 months before. He didn't like it, dreaming of her. It always brought him back to the reality of things, the way life was never going to get any better, day after day, year after year. Eventually, pushing the dream to the back of his mind, he reached out to grab the zip keeping the flap of the tent closed. Unzipping it and pushing the flap down, he emerged into the freezing cold morning air. Standing up, he wrapped his coat tighter around him. It wasn't long before he smelt the undeniable scent of cooking meat. It took him mere seconds to pinpoint exactly what it was, but once he did, he couldn't wait to eat it. And sure enough, as he walked over to the campfire, he saw that what was cooking was what his nose had identified it as. Beef was on the menu for breakfast.
Where'd you find the cow?
The chef turned around in surprise, but his facial muscles relaxed as the recognition took hold. He laughed before replying. I wish. No, this is canned beef. Ben grabbed it yesterday when you guys were out on the supply run. Sit down if you like, it's just about ready. The excitement had died some, but Marcus still stepped over the makeshift chair made of a tree log, then sat down on it. He would rather have eaten beef that had been sitting in a can for an amount of time than be starving for the rest of the day.
So how are you going these days, JD?
He asked the cook the question as he watched the sizzling of the beef over the fire. I think I'm okay. Everything is fine. Well, apart from the freezing weather and the killer steroid creatures, but those things kind of just sink into the background when you're as busy as I am. The two men laughed.
How's Allison?
She's good. Pregnancy is coming along fine. Only a few weeks left now. Pretty soon we'll be having to look after a new addition to the camp. It's pretty frightening, though, thinking of a child growing up in a world like this. It's really something to keep you up at night. Gives you the thought that maybe it would be better if no babies were born. JD had been looking at the edge of the forest while he had been talking, but as he finished his sentence, he looked over to see Marcus staring at the ground, a look of sadness on his face. Oh, shit, Mark, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. You didn't mean anything by it.
He looked back up into the forest before he continued.
And to be honest with you, I'm not sure I completely disagree with you. Raising a kid in a world like this, it's just not right. Making the kid a fighter since the day he is born? You shouldn't have to force the way of violence onto somebody like that. In the end, it's a hard choice.
Silence fell over the campfire. Finishing the cooking, JD cut the beef into pieces, putting them onto multiple plates. He handed one to Marcus, who thanked him.
As much as I would like to see my son alive today, I don't know if I would want to raise him in a world like this.
JD opened his mouth to reply, but was interrupted by another survivor running up to the campfire.
Guys, we have a problem.
What is it, more of those things?
Just follow me, there's no time to explain.
Both men put their plates down and followed the survivor as he ran through the camp. The only thing that Marcus could think while running was the fact that he didn't want it to be a horde. Two of those things were hard to handle when they were together. If they had to face 100 or more, they would have no choice but to gather up everything as fast as they could and evacuate the area. Hoping to get away from the monsters with everybody's lives intact, he hoped to God that didn't happen. They had a good spot here, nearby town to raid for supplies, good water source. Although it was mostly ice at the moment, in the summer months, it would heat back up, and they would have all the fresh water in the world. Nearing the edge of their camp, the fellow survivor stopped running, and whatever it was that he had been talking about came into view. It wasn't a horde, nor was it any of those creatures whatsoever. Marcus was slightly relieved, but he knew by the way it looked, they would have to do something about it, and soon. The survivor had led them to the far edge of the campsite, where a natural cliff formation was located, overlooking an area that was virtually cleared of trees. The view allowed one to see the main road that was a couple of miles away, and beyond into the area of the town which faced the cliff. The advantages of the cliff face allowed them to see any threats that were present on that side of the town, monsters and humans alike.
Well, I think we may have a problem.
Marcus sighed after he finished his sentence and stared down at the road. There, seemingly parked, were multiple vehicles. And what was worse, people were crowded around them, looking straight in the direction of the cliff face.
JD?
Marcus turned to the cook as he said this.
Get the guns ready.